York, Mr. Tonka. You're recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I have said time and time again that my top priority this session of Congress is to focus on job creation and growing our economy. I think that many, if not all, of my Democratic colleagues share that same goal. However, let me share a few numbers with you here this morning on this new session of Congress. These numbers suggest that perhaps not every member in this body shares that goal. 5, the number of weeks that this House has been in session under the new leadership. 12, the number of bills the House has voted on. 0, the number of House votes on bills that have been through their respective committees. 0, the number of House votes on bills intended to create jobs and address what should be our very top priority. The most important contest we face today is not between Democrats and Republicans. Rather, it's America's contest with competitors across the globe for the jobs and industries of our time. And economic growth is crucial for us to win this global race, not only for the future of our workforce, but also as a way to balance our budget and drive down the deficit. During his State of the Union address, I was happy to hear President Obama reiterate that we share the same top priority: jobs, jobs, and jobs. In fact, the chairman of the Federal Reserve, Ben Bernanke, is sitting before the Budget Committee today. I plan to discuss the economic growth rate and the GDP with the chairman later this morning. In June 2010, Chairman Bernanke suggested that the GDP would rise by about 3% over the course of the year last year and would likely increase at a slightly higher pace in 2011. In fact, the fourth quarter of 2010 showed a rate of growth at 3.2%. Compare that nearly double-digit turnaround to the end of the Bush administration, where we saw a 6% downturn in GDP. In addition to that slow but steady growth, we've seen the private sector add 1.2 million jobs, another stark turnaround from the final month of the Bush administration, where we lost more than 8 million jobs. Though we all acknowledge that job numbers need to grow more, I've been surprised at the enthusiasm for these GDP and private sector growth numbers coming from my colleagues on the other side of the aisle. They've been quite enthusiastic, claiming that the growth we've seen in the past few months is in large part from their policies. And yet we return to the numbers I mentioned previously. 0, the number of House votes on bills intended to create jobs since the start of this new session of Congress. And now we look to finish the budget for this year and await the budget proposal from President Obama for next year. We heard a lot in the campaign last year about the other side's job plan to cut and grow. In fact, we've seen that plan come to fruition through the Republican Study Committee. They have proposed $2.5 trillion in discretionary spending cuts over the next 10 years. This plan would put more than 1 million jobs at risk, halt our economic growth, and hurt middle-class families. Let me repeat that. This plan would put in risk more than 1 million jobs. Some of the examples of job losses include small businesses, where some 161,000 jobs would be lost due to $4 billion less in guaranteed loans. Law enforcement officials would lose their jobs, where 12,900 jobs would be cut, approximately 4,000 positions for FBI agents, 800 ATF agents, 1,500 DEA agents, and some 900 U.S. Marshals would be lost, as would 5,700 correctional officers in our federal prisons. 27,500 weatherization jobs would be cut. Just imagine, as one of the largest and strongest winter storms of the season just swept across the country, with some areas receiving record snowfall accumulations, temperatures that dropped dozens of degrees below zero, and deadly storms that knocked out power and left people in the cold. We are telling the weakest and neediest amongst us that they simply are not worth our investment. Americans' top priorities are job creation and deficit reduction, and they demand that we work together to meet these goals. We are committed to deficit reduction, but we are not going to do it in an irresponsible way that will threaten jobs, economic growth, and the security of our middle class. The budget cannot be slashed at the expense of jobs and investments in transportation, clean energy, innovation, and rebuilding. Rebuilding America, not jeopardizing our economic recovery. I agree with President Obama that we must out-innovate, out-educate, and out-build the rest of the world. But we cannot risk our economic future by rolling back investments that will help our private sector grow and put people back to work. With that, I yield back, Mr. Speaker.
The chair recognizes